Welcome back to Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. I'm your midday host, Julie Grant. Thank you so much for being with us on this Thursday. 27-year-old Adam Hillary was looking for companionship after his breakup with his long-term girlfriend. And like millions of other people, he turned to a dating app for help in making a connection. But the tragic way that Hilaire's story ends is a brutal reminder that looking for love can come at a cost. Anyone can be a target, and that is why we have brought in internet safety advocate and abduction survivor Alicia Kozakiewicz to share her expertise. Alicia, so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Court TV Live.
Thank you for having me.
I want to first applaud you on all of your efforts and just say how much I admire everything you're doing. And I want everyone at home to hear your story first before I get your take on this murder trial we're covering in Florida, where that dating app was used. Tell us a little bit about your harrowing tale of survival.
When I was 13, back in 2002, when the internet was incredibly new, I met somebody online and he began to groom me. And I wasn't aware of any dangers online. There were no stories like mine. There was nothing to go on. My parents talked about stranger danger, but that didn't work in the online world that well. And over a period of 8 months, this person groomed me. And on New Year's Day 2002, I agreed to meet him. I made a huge mistake where I was held captive in his basement dungeon and suffered horrendous abuse. I was raped and beaten and tortured. He kept me chained to the floor by a locking dog collar. He didn't feed me, and I knew that he was going to kill me. And my only chance of survival was to stay alive long enough to be found, to be rescued. And so I did whatever I had to do to survive, no matter what it was. My goal was to humanize myself because it would make it harder for him to kill me potentially. And on the last day, which I didn't know was the last day, he said, "I'm beginning to like you too much tonight. We're going to go for a ride." And I knew that that sort of backfired, that he was becoming too connected and that he was going to have to end my life sooner. But thankfully, that was the day that I was rescued. And the way that I was rescued is nothing short of a miracle. He had been live streaming what he was doing to me to other people online, and somebody saw this and they came forward. Again, this is in the very early stages of the internet. There was no talk of internet safety. I was one of the, if not the very first case of online abduction that had received widespread media attention. So there was nothing to go on. And sometimes people have a really hard understanding of that. They think of where we are today and say, well, you should have known better. The fact is that we didn't. I didn't know better. My parents didn't know better. People didn't know better back then. And today, we still have so many dangers. I have been an advocate now since I was 14 years old, and out there trying to keep people safe online, children and adults alike, because this happens. It's about vulnerability, and anybody can be vulnerable.
Oh, most definitely, Alicia. You are such a shining example of courage, strength, survival, all of it, and advocacy. I mean, what you're doing, you've turned an experience into something that is helping prevent horrific instances like you endured for other people. You are truly making a difference in our society by making it your mission to not let that experience define you, but to then define the future for others in the most positive, safe way. I want to talk about something with that, the process that led up to the kidnapping with you. It was a grooming process, right? This is an online predator. This guy preyed upon you, getting you to trust him, preying upon you, building a relationship, right? You gave an interview to a friend and colleague of mine, a fellow former prosecutor, journalist, my friend Jeffrey Malata, and you said that grooming was sort of like brainwashing. Can you explain that, please?
It is sort of like brainwashing. And the fact is that you can start with one child in the beginning, and at the end of this process, you have a child who interacts differently with the world. But grooming is simply pretending to be a child's friend by telling them what they want to hear versus what they need to hear, and being there for them. And today it's really incredibly simple because it's liking their posts, it's commenting, it's being available. It's making them feel good about themselves. And it's so hard to be a kid. Kids don't feel like they're enough. You can have all the love around you in the world. You can come from a wonderful family, or you can have a really rough childhood. But kids don't feel like they are enough. And a predator's goal is to exploit those vulnerabilities and make them feel like they are enough. And it can be so incredibly subtle. It just feels like a friendship. When people ask me, were there any red flags? Honestly, there weren't that many because it felt like a friendship. And now so many people are connecting online. This is the most common thing ever, which is why we just need to do it safely. When I first started speaking out at 14, my message was get off the internet, stay off the internet, kids. You don't need to be on it. And it really was like that. This was back in the days of MySpace, right? You didn't need to be on it, but now you do. Now it's part of our lives. And so we need to learn to use it and interact with it safely, interact with people online safely. Again, both children and adults.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the perfect segue into this case involving adults that we're covering here at Court TV in Florida. And one of the co-defendants is alleged to have lured the victim in this case, Adam Hilaire, through a dating app called Plenty of Fish, and making that connection as part of a big scam to then rob him with 3 other men. And she just testified to that this morning. I want to ask you to weigh in on this case. What comes to mind as you're hearing about this? This is a man victimized by a woman he met on a dating site. They went to his place the night that they met. So she saw his apartment that night and then returned with these other men, according to what she told the jury. What do you think, Alicia?
Well, these apps are incredibly popular. I know people who have met people on them, they've fallen in love, and they've gotten married. It's become, again, something so common. And that this Hilaire felt that he was safe doing this, that he was reaching out to somebody, he was making a human connection, that he may have been lonely, and that he felt safe, and that she exploited this. She took advantage of that. And the fact is that it's not the apps that are the problem. That's not what I'm saying. It can be a great resource, a great way to connect and to make friends. However, you do need to be careful. This could have happened just as easily in the real world. They could have met, he could have made friends with her, and she could have taken advantage of him that way. But it's easier to connect online. It's easier to find victims. It's easier to find ways to exploit people because people feel comfortable. They're on their phone, they're texting back and forth, they're sending pictures, and they feel this sort of instant connection with somebody. And she completely took advantage of that.
Right.
And that was her goal. Her goal, apparently, from what Evelyn had said, was that the goal was to finesse money, her word, out of men. So she went onto this app not to find love, but to take money off of somebody or to take advantage of them.
Exactly, to prey on an unsuspecting person. Alicia, tell me, when people ask you for tips, beyond the obvious, meet in a public place or something like that, what do you tell them?
So for adults, it's tricky because the same rules that you would tell a child, meet in a public place, do this, do that, it's different. But one that can really help is that if you're going to meet somebody, do take a friend with you. And if you feel a connection to this person, no matter what, don't take them back to your home or go to their home on that first date. Wait a little bit, get to know them in person first, have a few dates, take this slowly. And when you go out, tell somebody exactly where I know that seems sort of immature, but tell somebody where you're going and give all of the information that you can on this other person. The fact is that he could have done all of these steps and it still could have happened. It's not foolproof and it's not a complete and total utter safety measure, but it can help. If she had not returned to his home that evening to essentially case his home and look it over, then this may not have happened. And it's not that he did anything necessarily wrong. He made a mistake, yes, but it's one that so many people make And it's one that people will continue to make, which is why we have to talk about this, and we have to talk about it in terms of not just kids online, but also adults. I speak to high school students, and sometimes they're 18, or I speak to college students and they're over 18. And it's a different conversation with them because they are meeting people online. They are doing all of this. So you just have to talk to them about how to do it safely and remind them that there are dangers out there. That doesn't mean that every single person on the app has nefarious intentions. I'm not saying that at all, but you do have to be careful because those people are on there too.
Most definitely. Alicia Kozakiewicz, you are such a delight, beautiful, brilliant, and doing big things for not just children, but adults in our country to keep them safe. Please keep educating everyone. And you've got the Alicia Project, and you're working on legislative changes as well. We hope to talk to you again in the future here on Court TV. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we will continue our gavel-to-gavel coverage of the dating app murder trial. Andre Warner's defense attorney, Bob Norgard, spoke to Court TV about his strategy in the case defending Andre Warner and possibly to spare him from a death sentence. We'll talk about everything he said right after this.